As you all know by now, there has been a bunch of new Lord of the Rings movies announced, sort of.
I guess the question we're going to tackle today is it good or is it bad? Is it doomed?
Is there any hope for the future Lord of the Rings movies?
Just a fool's hope.
We know how good they have been at their peak. We know what Peter Jackson did.
We know we know about half of what he did. Like The Hobbit, meh.
Yeah, but the thing well, since more recent Middle-earth activities, The Hobbit suddenly looks a lot better than it used to.
It's true.
It's damn true.
Which is an interesting topic in its own. Maybe one for another day. But yeah, I mean, is there really any hope that we can get a good Tolkien film anymore?
Well, I think to answer that question, we probably need to look at what has changed between 1999, 2000, when the original trilogy was in production and being released, and now in 2023, after the release of the most expensive TV production in history, the way that was received in comparison to the way the trilogy was received. But also we need to look at how the trilogy was kind of received before it was released. Because even back then, like when the internet was in its early days, there was a lot of hate towards that before it came out, right?
Yes, as soon as there were rumors of some of the changes being made, even the little things like Arwen having a role that Glorfindel should have, like doing actions that Glorfindel should have done.
Yeah.
Little things like that. There was a lot of anger, might be the nicest word. Even Legolas's hair color, that was a big one.
It was.
And hair topics have been one for many discussions since.
Yeah.
Some are more founded than others.
Yeah, I agree. But it was very apparent that all those worries were kind of put to rest upon the release of the movie. Everybody was like, you know what? There have been changes. There has been some big lore changes. If we go after the release of Return of the King, for example, there was a lot of big changes in that movie. Big ones.
Yeah. Like
stuff that, as a book fan myself, I'm unhappy with looking back. But my introduction was to the franchise of Lord of the Rings was through the movies. So going at it from a filmmaking perspective, it's just like, no, I can forgive all that because it's still a masterpiece in cinema.
Yes. And we've both always said we got into the Lord of the Rings through the movies and then we explored into the books afterwards.
Yeah.
So it was always that funny experience of, reading the Lord of the Rings, watching the films first, then reading the Lord of the Rings, getting to Return the King, Dead Men Have Done Howard come along and he just lets them go. You're like,
yeah. But wait the Battle of Pelennor.
How are you going to win this then? It's just little things like that. But although I would love to have seen it faithfully adapted after reading the books, and I'd love to have seen how they would have done that.
The Great Company.
The Return of the King is still such a masterpiece that they proved you can change things.
Yes. It is okay to change the lore if it suits the story you're telling.
Yes.
And that, if we're going to be super vague about it, is where Amazon went wrong with Rings of Power.
Yes.
They made many, many lore changes, and some of them for no reason whatsoever.
No, and that was always it. Like, as long as there's purpose to actions, you can at least argue them.
Yeah.
And when there's no reasoning to any of it, that's where the I want to say hate, but I don't want it to sound unjustified.
It's just where the problems arise.
Yes.
It's like it's so hard to get on board with things that are being changed. It's almost like they're just like, let's be different.
Yeah.
Let's give all our elves short hair.
Yeah.
Let's make Galadriel a stroppy teenager. Like, these things were just, and this isn't a video to complain about Rings of Power. It's just trying to get the point across that lore changes in future adaptions will not necessarily make it bad as long as they are justified, if that makes sense.
Yes. But I think something else that comes into it is, even if you go past the lore, is do these people want to tell the kind of story that Peter Jackson wanted to tell? Or do they just want a franchise and a blockbuster to make them a quick buck and then move on to the next one? Because that's one of the big things is Peter Jackson put his life, and his whole team, not just him, they put their lives into making that trilogy. And
they showed.
And that's what it was about. It was about making the best adaptation of that work that they could and show how great it was. Whereas people can argue that Amazon did just want to make that quick buck. They wanted the next Game of Thrones. That was their line or that was Bezos's life.
We can base this on what happened with Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
Like the Marvel process was kind of very well formulated and thought out, and there was a clear timeline of we're introducing these first, and then the first Avenger to get to the Avengers, and then the stage 2 and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then DC were like, ooh, we need to do this quick. Release Justice League. That was basically what happened.
Yeah, they skip phase 1 and go to the finale, and it's just like,
and it doesn't work like that. You can't serve, especially when you're talking about adaptions, you can't serve the fans and the source material properly if you're just in it for the money. Whereas obviously Peter Jackson and team wanted to make money. Let's not make any mistakes there. But they, like James said, they lived it and almost treated it like a documentary.
Yeah.
Like they created this real world and then just documented it. That's almost like the vibe you get from the original trilogy.
Yeah. And it's almost that maybe you could have the argument of they shouldn't give it an over-the-top budget. Like
keep it modest.
Yeah, like, well, what was it? Was it one Hobbit movie had the same budget as all 3 Lord of the Rings, if I remember right?
Yeah.
And that was 10, 15 years ago now when that production would have started. So you can imagine the kind of budget they would give these things now, because they see Middle-earth as a moneymaker.
Yeah.
They can churn whatever out and we'll go watch it. But maybe they'd be better just stripping it back and going, you know what, let's not do a big over-the-top blockbuster.
No, I
Let's
agree, yeah.
do that. But is there any realistic hope of that happening?
I think there is. So obviously this is easy to say, but if I was sat at the head of the table and I was taking a seat back and looking at this whole franchise and going, how could I do this differently? How could I do it my way? The first thing I would be doing, the first notes I would be making is,
Fair enough.
What did everybody else do wrong? What was the poorly received things of every aspect of this franchise's history so far, from The Lord of the Rings to The Hobbit to The Rings of Power, even to the games? I would look at the stuff that's negatively received. What are the common themes? And I would strip those away. Heavy use of CGI. Poor character changes. Like completely pointless and irrelevant changes to things like hair. These things, they seem very small, but when they add up, they make a big difference in what the fans see and what the fans expect and what disappoints the fans.
Like you could say things like fan service can go over the top. Like, say, we're going to keep bringing it back to the Rings of Power because that's obviously
It's most recent.
It's the wrong way to go, and it's the most recent. And then obviously you compare it to Lord of the Rings, which is the best and, well, oldest in terms of live action.
Yeah.
But like Rings of Power did a lot of fan service on very on the nose and telling you these things. Whereas like you think of moments from the Lord of the Rings, like, okay, off the top of my head, one at the end of the Fellowship. After Boromir's died and they're about to set off, the 3 hunters, and Aragorn, you see him putting on the braces of Boromir. That's never mentioned. That's never said. There's no reference to that happening.
Yeah.
But once you've watched enough times and then people post the pictures and stuff and you see that, well, actually, no, he's shown like basically like a brother to him died and he's taken a part of him to fight with him for the rest of the battle until he becomes king of the city Boromir came from. And that is an absolutely beautiful moment, but it's never like emphasized and made a point of.
No, there's no close-ups of them on Boromir and things like that. It's just like you pick up on it, great.
Yeah.
It's just there for the people to notice.
And that's just the stuff that I just don't trust they will do anymore. I don't think they would give that much detail to it.
Not enough respect to the audience.
No. But I guess the question is though, is like, that's how I feel about a lot of modern studios. They just won't. I feel like they can make money with a lot less effort these days. And that's the way they'll look at it, is how much money can we put into, how much can we get out, and how fast can this happen? But they have rumored, and I'm not sure it's confirmed, to have Peter Jackson and team on board for these films. Do you think that actually means anything? Or do you think it is completely, to give him a bit of a payday, but he has no actual influence in anything?
I think if he's going to put his name to it properly, I think it means something. I think that Peter Jackson will look at this from a perspective of reputation. I think if he's going to be involved, he's well aware that he made one of the most successful franchises in history. And I think he's also well aware that he made one of the most disappointing follow-up trilogies of all time.
True. And
he himself has said that The Hobbit is not what he initially wanted it to be. There was obviously a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff with Del Toro and then Peter Jackson coming on later on and being like, oh God. There was a lot of stuff that went on. I think he could potentially see this as an opportunity to be like, right, let's do this properly. We've got another opportunity now to do a follow-up to Lord of the Rings, whether it's a sequel or a prequel or whatever. He can do it the way he wants to do it. And I think if he's going to be involved properly, whether he's director or producer or writer or whatever, I think he would certainly have, not demands, but he'd be like, if I'm going to be involved, I want to do it like this. I think he would be careful. Look, he made a lot of money from The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. A lot.
Yeah.
I don't think he's doing this for a payday. I think he would be doing this for a chance to do it properly.
I would love to think that. I would love it. But I've been so hurt, wounded, just attacked several times because of how things have gone. I just don't trust studios in general these days to do what's best for a franchise, to do what's best for a name. Like, I don't trust them to do the best for Tolkien anymore. They will just do what's best for themselves.
Yeah.
And for that, it's a big spectacle that they can then make theme parks out of. They can then make all the extra things to sell out of. They can they can squeeze every little penny out of it. And for me, that's kind of where I feel that it is a bit doomed. I would love them to put it in the hands of someone who absolutely adores Tolkien. Put it in our hands. We would make something great. But
we're busy with the guard, James.
Oh yeah. But I don't know. I just don't have faith that they will do it justice.
I know what you mean.
And I don't know if that's me being completely pessimistic. And I don't want to come across
cautious optimism, James.
So I'm not saying those words. Jeez, no chance. No, like, I'm always going to get excited about the idea of a new adaptation. We've said before, I'll say it again. You can't get a good adaptation without adaptations, but you can ignore the ones that are bad and not watch them again.
This is something I wanted to talk about, actually, because I don't know if our buddy Ryan's ever going to watch this, but if you do, I know you feel the same way because we've talked about this. But when people get so angry about news of expanded universes, sequels, follow-ups, spin-offs, whatever, when they get so mad about that happening, it really confuses me. It's like people act as though it's overwriting what's come before. It's like you're saving your game, but the progress is like overwriting a previous save. It's not doing that. It's just another one. You still have the one before that you can use or watch in this case. That makes sense? So why be so mad? If you don't like it, just don't watch it. If you don't like care about it or whatever, it doesn't even have to exist in your mind. You don't have to pay any attention. Just go and read The Lord of the Rings again. Go and watch the original trilogy again. Having new adaptions is okay. They don't have to be good. But if they don't try them, there's no possibilities that we'll ever get something great again. So I'm all for it. I'm not saying it's going to be good. No. I'm just happy it's happening.
Okay, well, I will just... So I'm assuming you're not saying like rewriting anything, like anything that's already written. Do you mean more filling in the gaps?
Yeah, I mean like just more content set within Middle Earth. Good thing.
So if there's stuff that's never been written about before, gaps in time, filling those gaps, fine.
Yeah.
Which is, in theory, why Rings of Power could have worked. With there's so many big gaps in the Second Age.
Yeah.
But they rewrote what would already be written anyway, so, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, just to clarify that.
Yeah, just to clarify. But even if, like we were saying at the start, like The Lord of the Rings did have law changes. So even if there is stuff being produced about periods in time that we do know about, and there are law changes, I'm okay with it if it's justified within the story that's being told.
Yeah, which I suppose is another interesting part. This is going to be part of like the Lord of the Rings cinematic universe, because obviously the cinematic universe is different from the book universe. We have different events. We have additional characters in the movies and stuff, like from The Hobbit and all. So I'm assuming they're probably going to continue with the cinematic universe, like, for obvious reasons, with Peter Jackson and stuff involved. I can't see them starting again.
No.
And then they can also use like character, like designs of cities and everything as well.
It's a lot less work.
And again, it leads to that, you know, they can make a theme park, they can make all the extra stuff because they already have a base knowledge within their audience kind of thing. But I just keep going back to it and I'm going, well, no, it's all about making money. It's going to be about making money for them.
But that's the case. If they're sticking within that cinematic universe and they're using all the designs of Peter Jackson, it is about making money because people are familiar with it. They want to see continuations, but also they're not then paying millions of dollars for concept art and test designs. They've already got all that.
Yeah.
So it works out cheaper. So when you're looking at profit versus expenditure, it's much more beneficial for them. So it does make sense to go that way, I guess.
Maybe.
It's an interesting discussion regardless. Our discussion here hasn't really like rounded up anything, but I think we've put our concerns and hopes across.
Yes.
But I definitely think this discussion should be continued in the comments.
Yes. And I will end it with a question to you then.
Okay.
We'll go on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being Rings of Power, 5 being The Lord of the Rings. Where do you honestly feel like maybe say the first one they released, whatever comes first in their universe.
Is War of the Rohirrim counting towards this?
No, that
Okay,
was
live
this
action.
was before this agreement.
okay.
I believe this isn't part of that
Okay.
same. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe this is part of the same idea that they've got for this universe. Where do you think, in terms of how good on
Like
the scale,
its potential or what it will be?
what it will be? Because potential, you could still say a second age show potential is like about here. The reality is it's down there. So reality, actually, I'll go both then, because realistically, Tolkien's world potential is 5 out of 5 every time.
Yeah.
So scrap that then.
No, stick with that.
Realistically.
Stick with that. So potential, because
Okay,
1 to 5.
potential.
If 5 is Lord of the Rings, I don't think even with potential we're ever going to beat it. I think it's peak of cinema, and I genuinely believe
And I
that.
do think time did have a big impact
Yeah.
as well. So yeah.
So I'm going to say potential is 4
Okay.
because, and I genuinely believe that. Like, I'm not just saying, well, obviously it could be good. Like, the potential is 4 because source material is great. We have a team of people that have already proved they can do it. We have examples of what not to do, and with today's technology, and I just feel like there could be something great. My actual expectations, I'm just going to go bang in the middle and go 3. It seems like a safe option, but that's generally what I believe. I think it'll come out and we'll be like, all right, it's better than Rings of Power.
Yeah.
It's okay. Not what I would have done, but I feel like that's how I'm going to be with it.
Fair enough. Okay. I would go potentially, yeah, I kind of feel the same. I feel like everything kind of came together so perfectly for the Lord of the Rings. That's like the holy grail. You're not realistically going to get there. So I'd even say 4.5. It could get close if they focus on character more than spectacle, but I don't really believe they will. Reality, I genuinely, and I hate to say this right now with how I feel on everything, I think reality is like a 2. I think it'll be better than the Rings of Power, but that's not setting the bar too high. But I feel like it'll be worse than The Hobbit, which I would have put about mid-ground.
Having said all of this, though, we've had no trailers, no images, no news, no names,
nothing.
no nothing. So it's really too early for us to say. We're
This
just
is-
going off gut instinct right now.
Yeah, this is just wounded Tolkien fans hoping for the best and fearing for the worst.
Yeah. Let us know your hopes and fears in the comments down below. It's been a while since we've done one of these discussions. It's always fun. Hopefully you guys enjoy listening to us rambling about our hopes and fears. Certainly enjoyed doing it. So hopefully we'll hear of you in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next time on The Broken Sword.
Bye, guys. Okay. Oh. Stay still. What the?
Ready?
Yes.
As you all know by now.